All right. Welcome to Table Talk, where we talk about everything tabletop. This is gonna be an interesting one. I feel like there's gonna be some interesting conversations. But how you doing, Alex?
Good. Warframe has taken over my life, and I can't recover.
I love to hear it. Something games taking over people's lives. You know, there's not enough of that. You know how often I wish I could just give everything to a game and then just enjoy myself ridiculously to play the one game like all the time. I really wanted that.
I am trapped in my sci-fi cyber ninja prison. I cannot escape, but the door is open, yet I don't want to leave.
Yeah.
I also gotta say, the later quests, pretty fucking good. I gotta
say, yeah.
The Chains of Harrow quest is phenomenal. And then the Prelude to War quest, also very good. The storyline's getting like to a point where I give a shit.
Yeah, it was very interesting. Someone told me in a comment somewhere, I can't remember. It might have been, I think it was on Twitter actually. They're just like, yeah, the game's kind of hard to get into until you hit about the second dream, and then everything starts becoming a little bit more real.
Yeah, the quest, it's becoming great. Like, listen, everyone knows what I'm into. Everyone knows that I like me some dark, depressing sci-fi. It's turning into that very quickly. I do mean this. Like, I think in Warframe, there's only a single character that's fully out for like to help you, the player, and that's Ordis.
It's true.
It's because he's a fucking AI that like is programmed to help the operator. Like that's his function. Yeah, no, it's been my life. I explained a bit of the storyline to a buddy of mine when I went to the Warhammer store yesterday. Like he was like, "Yeah, someone tried to explain to me the Warframe lore, and it took them like all day." I was like, "Yeah, I mean, nothing much has changed except for all of this." And he's like, "What?"
Yeah, that's pretty nuts. Honestly, if it wasn't for, I guess... You know, it's funny. With Warframe, I feel like the reason why Denver became bigger than it is, which to be fair, for a game as old as it is, it's still doing pretty good.
From what I understand, it is one of the better performing and better revenue earning free-to-play game. It's not the best. I think the best is still like probably like Warzone or like Apex, like those like battle royales.
Right.
But I think that Warframe fits in this really interesting point of MMOs and like free to play. Yeah. I certainly think it's one of the better designed free to play games.
I agree as well. I think for a company that had a very specific vision that wasn't necessarily out to make as much money as possible, they did it right. Is it the most profitable? No, but it's going to last longer than any of the more profitable ones is. And if you're happy with the work and proud of the content you're making, it's perfect, honestly.
Yeah.
Because, you know, there's a level of greed and quality that just can't exist in the same space. And I'm sure Warframe is not completely free of sin, but I would say for a team that seems very earnestly like about the product they're making and the improvements they've made over the years, they've done about as best as anyone can expect for a free-to-play like RPG.
It's to the point where I'm considering, because it's something I want to branch into anyways, like making stuff that's not Warhammer. I kind of would want to try out making a video for Warframe, like going over Warframe lore.
I say there's similarly niche content, honestly. Like,
I'd say Warhammer's a bit bigger. The audience for Warhammer is like stupid big.
I would say yes, for sure. But I would say like on the YouTube space, it can be very similar.
Yeah, I bet there's a lot of overlap at least.
I think there probably is as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to try it out at some point, and then gets the dangerous game of, you know, making new content that's not the core thing. But like I finally changed my YouTube bio. It's not just
Oh.
Markiplier's anymore.
I see.
It's just I make videos on Warhammer and other things, so I gotta fill the other things.
True.
So I might experiment with it. I might make something for like over the holiday break. Yeah, that's the difference. It's the Warhammer lore is stupid big, and then you look at like the sheer difference between Warhammer lore content and Warhammer rule content. It's so much different.
Yeah.
It's just this massive thing. I'm trying to bridge that gap a little bit, where I want to one of my goals is to give people like a really short, simple, like, hey, you want to play this faction after like just being interested in them? Here's at least some stuff you should keep on your radar. Here's the stuff that works. Here's the stuff that's like good, so you don't invest yourself into stuff that's shit, because it's really feels bad when you spend a good few $100s and then you have this kit that's you learn, oh, this is absolute dog shit and will only hurt my list for including it. Because if you spend a bunch of money on something, you should have something that functions. That's like the thing. I wish Warhammer like everything was just good. It's not. Looking at the custodian army, like half or like 75% of my shit is completely useless now because they eroded it.
Yeah, I would say probably the most healthy like percentages is probably like 75% lore, 25% rule.
With literally no numbers or like looking at everything, I would agree. I think that's a very safe estimate. Because the difference between like Auspex Tactics is like one of the bigger like tabletop gaming YouTube channels, and then there's like Adeptus Ridiculous, Luton, Wes Hammer, fucking Major Kill, like those names where they all have like a few 100,000 subs.
Right. Yeah.
And then I think Auspex is like around 100K or like lower, like just that.
Yeah. So I think what Lentholium here said is about right. Warhammer is definitely mostly about Warhammer nerds and not about Warhammer gamers.
Yep. And I do like other sci-fi, so I'd like to step into other sci-fi because I'm just a giant sci-fi nerd in general. I really like stuff that just takes place in space. That's like my favorite thing.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting speaking on that as well. Excuse me. The tabletop community is so interesting, I guess. And we'll get into it here in a little bit more when more people kind of hop in. Probably in like 10, 15 minutes, something like that. But
yeah.
I want to say like it's kind of a similar thing of I don't even know what really constitutes the majority of tabletop and like what people want versus like consume. Because I've been doing a lot of research in recent times. I love Pathfinder 2nd Edition, but even in our own community here on this channel, we get a lot of people who are actually super geeking out about other tabletop games. Like, you mention it, and they're just like, oh my god, they mentioned the game! It's crazy! And, you also, when you look at, like, the content creation side of things, the biggest things are people who are more fans of tabletop streams. And then there's still a good number that are interested in like the tabletop culture. And then below that, one more tier are the people who are actually interested in like the rules or breaking them.
A lot of breaking them.
A lot of breaking them. I feel like people are very interested in that kind of stuff. And it makes me honestly curious as to like, is tabletop more, I don't know, just like a bunch of different groups than it is about a bunch of people who have one common interest? You know what I mean? Also, if you like dark sci-fi, check out Leah Chison's Remembrance of Earth's Past series.
Sounds
Interesting.
I'm keeping this open in a tab. We will see if I actually do that. If there's Audible books for it, I will. I have a lot of Audible free credits. The problem is I haven't read or listened to any book other than Warhammer because it's part of like my research process now.
Right, yeah. You gotta
So
keep
yeah.
space in your main content.
However, I will look over the core concept of it, and I'm always wanting to get into more sci-fi stuff and new stuff. I can only talk about Warhammer, Halo, and like Warframe so much.
It's fair.
Or Starship Troopers, which is another. That's been on the channel for a while because I talked about Guard and then Tyranids. That's Starship Troopers. I'm doing my part.
It's fair.
Only good bug's a dead bug.
But yeah, and so I don't know if you're watching this post the stream or you're here now, like, what content do you guys like for tabletop stuff? Like, what do you want to see? I'm super curious because honestly, I don't know anymore. I feel like a lot of people absolutely love tabletop, but the way they love it, I think, is just a mystery to me sometimes for some groups of people. Cause like, here, let me state out like my preferences out clear. I love deep narrative games where I can get that kind of mechanical satisfaction of tabletop with making impactful and emotional moments with characters. That's what I personally am all about tabletop for. So when I'm on like Twitter or various other forms of media and I see like people who are just all about like, yes, I absolutely love my game right now. Everyone is trying to hit and seduce this lizard person NPC in our game, and we're all making this big poly group around this one NPC librarian, and we love it. And I'm just like, what? Huh?
Yeah, some people.
You spoke words at me, and I don't know what you're talking about.
My absolute favorite phrase. None of those words are in the Bible.
It's very interesting, and being a content creator in the tabletop space, I feel like you get shoehorned into like one of a few categories, but I don't see a lot of people like just talking about enjoyment of tabletop in general. You know what I mean? Most videos, views, whatever, are about like, this is lore of the series, this is rules of the game, this is really funny actors playing the game, you know, or voice actors or whatever. But when you compare it to something like video game channels, a lot of people watch video game stuff because they find either the game interesting or the person interesting, or are on the lookout for new stuff. And that's another thing. There's so many people in the tabletop community that absolutely love like other games than the standard top, games. And yet channels that focus on looking at other tabletop games do super terribly. So
yeah, it's an interesting like catch.
I don't know. Like maybe this whole time I've been barking up the wrong tree of trying to make tabletop look like fun. Maybe it's all more about like fan culture. Because even like the grognards, right? They kind of have just a fan culture of the older style of D&D. So maybe it's just all like different fan groups getting together rather than people who are just in the space because they enjoy the hobby itself. I don't know. Interesting.
I think it's interesting because it's whenever we talk about this, I always am struck with the fact that I don't watch any tabletop YouTubers. I don't. Because like I play it, so I'm like I'm there already. I'm gonna watch something else. That and just in general, it's just like I like some tabletop like lore and all that, but nothing sucks me in as much as like because Warhammer's like the one, but it's because like besides other like game, it's a fucking multimedia franchise. There's other shit it's in. I don't know if there's some phenomenal Pathfinder books. I'd probably like novels. I'd probably read them.
I don't know about Pathfinder. I know there's some actually really good D&D ones.
I've heard very good things about some of the D&D books. It's the R.A. Salvatore I've heard is a phenomenal writer. And to be fair, he's worked on some stuff I do like. Whenever I see his name in a thing, I'm like, oh, nice. You did a good job in here. Like the lore he made for the Kingdom of Avalon game is really good. It's such an interesting lore. See, yeah, I admit as much. Like, or I'd expect it as much. Like, if there were Pathfinder books, I don't expect them to be anything phenomenal. The world books, I think, are very well written. I would love it if like there's just a good novel set in Galarian. I think it'd be a much more fun way to experience Galarian, like lore, other than just like reading a wiki or a world book. Yeah. Love me the world books, but you know, there's something so much more fun about like experiencing it either in game or through a novel.
Awesome, that actually came through real fast.
The YouTube one?
Sorry. Yeah, I just typed that like, I don't know, 5 seconds ago, 10 seconds ago.
Yo.
So, hopefully that means it's working. And that did show up on my multi-stream, so I don't know. I did disconnect and reconnect the account that seemed to fix it, so. But yeah, I don't know. See, that's the thing, right, is I agree. In fact, I absolutely love tabletop. It's the thing that I've dedicated a good part of my life. It's the hobby that I think about the most. It's the most consistent thing in my life as far as like entertainment I consume regularly.
Mm-hmm.
And I also don't watch a bunch of content on it. And which is strange because like when I look at like video game stuff, it's the complete opposite. I have channels I watch to find new games. I have channels I watch because I enjoy watching that person play that game. And I gotta say, as far as like video games are concerned, I'm far less of a nerd for video games than I am for tabletop games. Like, I just don't get as invested. I still love video games, don't get me wrong. I still play a shit ton of games. But I just don't get like as invested in that as like sitting around with my group of friends talking for hours on end about tabletop theory, you know, kind of stuff.
Yeah. I wonder, because is it maybe the fact that playing a tabletop and doing that is so much like a different level of work and effort than it would be for a video game? Like for a video game, you turn on, you play it, you experience something cool. For a tabletop game, you're there, you're role playing, you're paying full attention, like going through all that stuff. But like, so it's like definitely not like the same thing. But what if it's like I don't want to bring work home with me? You know, like I'm not gonna work while I'm home.
I don't know. That's an interesting point.
Because it's like I like tabletop. I love it. I love playing it. But then once I'm done, I'm like, that's great. Now to watch a live play thing. And one of the reasons I don't like live play is because I'm like, well, I could just be in the game I'm playing in.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot, actually, from a lot of people in the field, as well. Is a lot of people, especially those who play a lot, are not as interested in watching live play stuff because they're like, you know, I would rather be running my own adventure, my own story. Because the thing about tabletop that is so fun is how unique the experience is to each group and table. But to be a thing to consider is a lot of people still are here. We have an audience here today or
No,
watching a
yeah.
tabletop.
Oh,
You know,
totally. I just think, is that a reason why a lot of people do that? Like, is that a reason, not a? Because there are some people who you love what you do, you never work a day in your life, but like, so a lot of like cooks, like people who work at restaurants, they don't cook when they get home. They order shitty takeout or like easy meals that require no prep. Like that same idea of it. Like I don't want to fully consider and think about tabletop. I'm not playing tabletop right now. I'm gonna look into Halo and play Halo.
right?
Like it's a different level of investment of effort.
I think that also applies to playing it because, right, again, I absolutely love tabletop. I think I would struggle to put 20 hours into playing tabletop in a week when it comes to gaming. That's almost expected.
Yeah, like the amount of time I've put into Warframe, I don't think I could match in other things. The idea of playing a tabletop marathon for that long sounds exhausting.
Well, I mean, of course you wouldn't all do it all in one sitting, but it's
Yeah.
still like the coming back and coming back and coming back. Is tabletop something that can be consumed in that way, or is it just like it's something that's only good when you dedicate time and energy to it? Can you have casual tabletop that you can play as much as you could play like a video game?
To be honest, I also do fully believe that you can. It's just the thing of it depends on your attitude for it. Like I don't think fully that we could, or if we are, it's something for a different purpose. But like the type of like tabletop players we are, like you and I, is we like a deep story, we like deep characters, we like long like thing. Like all the great campaigns we've played over the years. But like there are people that go out and it's like, oh, I made a dungeon for y'all, and everyone's like, yeah, new dungeon, and they like go through, they kill stuff, they loot, and they just like that process. Like it's a difference. It's like the difference between someone saying, hey, man, my favorite shit to relax, I'm gonna play through all of Pillars of Eternity, and then someone else is like, I'm gonna play Diablo. It's just like the different, like what you want out of it. To us, it's not the same.
Yeah.
Someone else, they probably could. I've played in very casual D&D games, and it's very casual. And I'll say, like, that is the type of thing where you can really, like, yeah, all right, just D&D for a bit. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, it's something that, like, because I was thinking recently as well, I think another part of it is you play a game and you play it like a lot, but like think of even the games that you enjoy the most. How long, like month wise, time wise, do you think you play like even the games you enjoy the most? And then look at tabletop, it's just like, well, one campaign lasts at least a year.
Yeah.
And I think it's that lack of variety. So maybe another thing as well is doing more style of stuff that's more mixed. You know what I mean? Like trying out like playing one for like like 5 sessions, like a few sessions, and then doing another one for a few sessions, another one, and then when you want to come back to a campaign, you can't come back to that game. Like, is that something you would like? I'm curious.
I mean, I think I don't know. I'd have to do it because, like, I've played in games where it's like we have a very unregimented start time. We play when we can. We play for good amounts, and I'll say it's fun. I also really like the every week we do something. But the other thing is, like doing that creates this rigidity where, working around it or just like, oh yeah, we're hanging out and then we'll play D&D is like unheard of. Instead of just like, it's not like we come here to play D&D, not we come here to hang out and D&D is there. It's the difference of mentality there. I think both have like good merits and both have some issues that come about, like literally anything in this world.
Because that's well, and that's the thing. As I think you're right. It's like people want different things out of different kind of games. I know people who never play in long running games. All they have are one shots.
Yeah.
This is the only games they play, and it's not even because they necessarily want to. It's just that's all anyone can ever commit to. But I think you kind of hit an interesting point of there's never a moment where we're just chilling out and where someone's just like, "Hey, want to do D&D?" You know?
Yeah.
Where it's like, "Hey, y'all want to play Deep Rock Galactic?" You know, a game you just boot up, and it's just very non-committal.
It's the thing that occurs when you have like a very rigid like start time and like when we play. It's like, for example, the idea of like, hey, do you want to play Pathfinder? It's like, oh no, but that's what we do Tuesday. It's just like the cause of that, where you create this now there's a dedicated time, and it's like, no, it ain't D&D time.
Right? Yeah, that's interesting.
But then the other idea is shifting from that even necessary, or will it do anything? Because I mean, you have a non-rigid start time, and then you have games that just fall flat all the time. Then you come across the problem of those games that like are played for a few sessions, and everyone has other things they do because they're not setting up their lives to be like, oh yeah, Tuesday nights I'm free for Pathfinder. Because then it's like we play around a work schedule. Everyone's like wildly different schedules, and there's that brief moment every few months where we get a chance to all be in the same like call or room together. Like, it introduces new problems, but it introduces like different outcomes of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's that thing of there's no perfect thing. The perfect situation is that everyone has endless free time and can do whatever the fuck they want whenever they want. That's absolutely unattainable.
Yeah, it's just something, and like what everyone here is saying in chat is like kind of playing along those same lines. Is tabletop is just something that someone has to run it.
Yeah, someone has to work.
Someone has to work to actually make it go. And it's something that isn't, I guess, hand-fed to you guys, in a sense. But now, what if more tabletop games introduced, like, an event card system? Kind of like if you played Arkham Asylum or Arkham Horror or other kind of games where every
Gloomhaven,
round,
maybe
even Gloomhaven to some degree, yeah, where you get more story prompts through like random card draws, and it just becomes a game about like improving and going through and dealing with those improv situations rather than like some deep narrative that someone set up.
Yeah, then the only other thing that comes about is the at what point does that game become unplayable because you've done all of it? Like the Cards Against Humanity issue. Cards Against Humanity is really fun the first 1 or 2 games. And then once you get the repeats, you're like, oh, I've seen this one.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's that necessity of like buying endless shit, and that's to a point like it'd be super cool, but that'd be a game you play every once in a while.
Mm-hmm. Well, my thought, and I talked to someone else about this before, because I think one of the things that tabletop games don't do enough is actually like gamify narrative points. Is having it be something more along the lines of you get prompts, you get card prompts that allow you to then start some kind of event or narrative based on your character.
Mm-hmm.
Because say you drew a card from this event deck and it was you suffer a family tragedy. That might be different for every character. You know what I mean? Say your character is an orphan. Well, then how do you make that as a thing? Well, maybe it was someone you considered family has an event, and maybe that's something that you then improv a either short or long narrative around that kind of stuff. Because I feel like that has the opportunity of making it where even if you get the same cards, they don't mean the same things to different players or even different characters that you may play through the game. You know what I mean? And then if you get enough cards of a high enough variety where you're not like, oh, this is my third family tragedy of the campaign or something like that.
Yeah.
You know?
Your family keeps fucking dying, dude. You gotta check something about your life.
But stuff like that. And then you tie to that, like, a game element. Like, you suffer a family tragedy, your character gains stress. Or, and then you need to work through it to remove that stress. Or maybe it's like you connect with an old friend and then you get like a new contact that you can access in the game for different game like things, like maybe that contact's a merchant or something along those lines. I definitely think that is a potential way to make tabletop less demanding while still providing deep, interesting narrative points, because it's based on the creativity of the group rather than one person kind of doing everything.
And before we move on too much, it was pointed out in the chat, I gotta know, what is a hero point card? What is that?
I don't know if I have hero point cards. I do. I have the hero point deck. I have one right here, actually. So I don't remember the exact rules for it, but you can spend hero points to instead do they have like a time you can play them, and they have certain effects, and you can spend hero points for more than just the standard like re-roll.
Oh.
Yeah, so one of them is like Surge or Mag. Until the end of your turn, you can activate one magic item that you have already activated once today. This activation doesn't count against the item's frequency limit if the item is a once per day item or a short increment of time. If the item is a wand, activating it doesn't cause it to go overcharge. So you use a hero point, and you can utilize it for extra things.
That's neat.
Yeah, it's definitely very interesting, and I like stuff like that. And I think that's something that can make, you know, funny enough, it's something that can make your tabletop experience more roguelike in a sense. Because, I mean, they are roguelite, right? Your character dies, you're no longer playing that character, you gotta start a new one.
Yeah.
Build up new things. So if you start having these event cards that give your characters, you know, temporary or constant buffs or debuffs, it makes the experience something that's a lot more unique and super varied every time, because you don't know. You don't know what kind of events you can get and how they can change your character. And there's a lot of times I've seen someone's experience in tabletop go up the second they start considering other things for their character, like what their favorite food is, for example.
Yeah.
Or if they have family members. You know what I mean? We were playing Anima, and one character decided, like, what's everyone's favorite sweet? And they looked into sweet shops, and then they spent more time than going to cities, checking out sweet shops, and kind of having character moments. And that would never have come up if they didn't consider anything outside of, you know, what's on their character sheet.
Yeah, true.
You know?
I think it's an interesting thing. I kind of like the idea of that. I like the idea of adding more gamified stuff like that narratively. Though also pointed out, like, I gotta say, I'm super fascinated with the idea of a solo tabletop game. Like that concept, because if I've like looked into them, only because I would never play one. I have no interest in doing the work that would require to do that myself. However, like, it seems dope, and I think it's a really cool option for people who like creative writing.
Yeah. And I feel like, yeah, in length, I agree. There's a lot of prep-free TTRPGs that are more like dungeon crawl-esque. But
Yeah.
I'm not talking necessarily about completely prep-free. I'm talking about a game that gives you narrative prompts to work off of.
Yeah. I mean, from what it sounds like, we
benefits.
are also just saying that Lancer is one of the best tabletop games of all time, which I agree. I completely agree with that.
You know, something funny I was thinking to myself recently is maybe I've been playing too much Pathfinder recently. What if I took like a season break and did like a 10 session Lancer game to mix things up for a bit?
I would be on board if we're like, hey, for this season of Bad Luck Gamer, Riptide, all done, or we're on season break, let's play Lancer or Vampire the Masquerade. I would be fucking there for it, dude.
Yeah. It's something that I've been thinking about, and I think that might be something that can make longer campaigns a little bit better, though it also highly increases the chance of games just getting dropped when
it does.
There wasn't enough momentum behind it.
However, it's all a game of mentalities, you know. It's all the game mindsets. Because the difference of we're going to take a tabletop hiatus, which I've done. I did that recently. I had a friend who went through some really bad creative block, something I've been through. And it's like, all right, I'm going to take this time off tabletop. We did, and now they're back in the swing of it. Like nothing happened. They're right back to how they were like a good while ago. Perfect thing. Great mindset. However, then there's the other mindset of, hey, this campaign is on a hiatus. We're on a season break. This is like a TV show. And I was like, oh, we got to go back to the show. It's a different mindset.
Yeah.
Because I know at least for me, I can 100% be like, all right, hey guys, we got into this chapter point of Riptide. Do we want to keep going or do we want to try something new? I'd be always try something new. Because I know I could always go back to our Pathfinder game like nothing happened.
That's something that I've been considering as well. And I think that's something that can allow us to look into some of the games that we've really enjoyed and kind of explore more. I also feel like it makes players, I feel like, reset on their character perception. Like, sometimes you can mire yourself in how you're playing a character, and then if you play something else and kind of like get away from that character for a little bit and come back, then you might actually start doing some more interesting things with your character because you've had some more like insight or what have you.
I do think that me playing Sebastian and Arthur around the same time did help. Because it was one hand, I'm playing a character who's fucking dumber than a box of bricks, and I'm playing a character who is like, but also is like kind and genuinely kind of wants to help people. But then there's like the somewhat callous, like intelligent, like tactician. Like both of them are very different, and it was very fun jumping back and forth. And besides, like if we did like Lancer or Vampire the Masquerade, I have two characters that I've been wanting to fucking play again. I want to play my cool cowboy mech. I want to go into like, because I want to make a character that goes into like how fucking depressing space travel is. His whole backstory is that he his whole like shit with Texas Red, the mech I played in our Lancer one shot. The pilot, he's an ex-penal legion or penal like colony like convict who keeps up like the radio thing because his dad back home was like ran a classical music radio like station. So it's like the one remnant he has of his family that because his penal colony was on the other side of like a massive place of space, his family's all dead.
Yeah.
He's never going to see them again. And I want to explore that because that's a super terrifying, sad thing that no one fucking talks about in sci-fi.
Yeah.
It's so cool. The idea of being like, I'm going to be a space adventurer is you putting like saying fully, hello family, I'm going to leave. You're all dead and so am I.
Yeah.
Fucking relativity when you're traveling faster than light. Time dilation.
It's very interesting.
Yeah, and then the other one is I really want to play my Disco Elysium The Man.
Right.
Because I actually just also really liked playing him. Like, playing a Malkavian is so much fucking fun.
Yeah, I definitely think it's something to start considering, and maybe I'll talk with everyone else about that kind of stuff as well.
100%. I think it's a thing of, it's the attitude of, hey, we're not pausing this because everyone's having a bad time. We're pausing this so like We can do some other stuff, throw it in there, even bring up like the idea of, hey, you know, the mentality of this is Pathfinder time instead of like, hey, this is us time. Let's have fun with us. So it's a paradigm shift. I don't know if that's the right word. I vaguely know what paradigm means.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yes!
It's pretty accurate.
Yes.
And yeah, Cassie, I mean, definitely there's a lot of groups that had like rotating DMs and stuff like that. Thing for me, right? I actually love DMing. I actually don't get DM burnout because I just thoroughly enjoy the process so much. If anything that would help me would be swapping game systems every once in a while, or narratives.
See, because I got that really bad, but accelerated. I didn't, when I was like DMing, I didn't have like DM burnout. I had system burnout. I was like, I'm like, or I'd be like mentally so invested in like a system, like to write stuff, and I'm like, ugh, I don't want to fucking see fantasy. I want to do a modern thing. So like, I'm 100% like that DM who's like, I just want to, all I want to commit to is one shots, because I can experiment, do different things. And then for like campaign, it's like I'm gonna be stuck in the same world for this long. Ugh. Hate that. I mean, I have one shot I ran a few times, like some pretty fun success of literally the party gets abducted by gray aliens, and then like to fight a xenomorph at the end. Like that was it. That was all because I was just like, I'm so fucking tired of fantasy. I want to be in a spaceship. It was great. I had a lot of people have like thoroughly enjoyed that one shot.
Yeah, and so you know, like, I think a lot of it kind of boils down to is I still think tabletop is evolving. I still think that the kind of tabletop we get now is not the tabletop that like I feel is at its pinnacle. And having something that's very easy to get into that offers more to the game than just game mechanics. Because that's the thing again. It's a narrative. Excuse me. It's a narrative game. It's it's a story game, and yet the books almost entirely focus on mechanical rules for how to fight mostly, and do some other stuff in the game, rather than how to tell interesting stories. And there are some games out there that do, I admit, add some extra stuff, give some more room. When we tried out Blades in the Dark, it was very much like all the rules are kind of based around how you just narratively finagled things, I guess.
Yeah.
To make it where you could make certain checks either way. I still don't feel like even Blades in the Dark really did it that well, because it didn't really give you narrative points for your character. It's more of you had to justify narratively why you were rolling. And so I feel like there's a lot of wiggle room, and I feel like as well the culture needs to adapt better to be more like, hey, we don't need to run consistent 1-year campaigns all the time. We can take a month here or there to try a new game out, or we can just play like 10-session campaigns, you know, back to back to back or whatever in different game systems.
Yeah.
And just have something new and get a new flavor of character story where, like, for the people who do want to tell those long narratives, that's still going to be there. But for the people who get tired of it, I think there needs to be a better outlet for it. And the community, I think overall, the tabletop community could also use just a better injection of genre shifts rather than playing this version of fantasy setting.
Or the one I see constantly of, I'm going to force D&D 5e to fit this separate thing.
Right.
And it's like, instead, what if you did this game that is set in this very unique place? What if you just played a game that was in that setting? A lot of people are very adamant of like, no, I'm not doing that. It's like, you could though.
I know the rules for D&D. That's it. I refuse to learn anything else. And in speaking of that, we now hop into the main topic that we're a little late for, but you know, I think we were having some interesting discourse. You know, the edition wars and the different types of tabletop is a very diverse community.
Yeah, exactly. It's literally that. It's like, I can't pay for another book, and it's like $30.
Yeah.
Oh, I gotta save up for this $60 book that adds nothing.
Well, it is like, right, core books are like $60, right? It's no different than video games, really.
Yeah.
And if you do want to get more into a game, then you can just start investing more into a game. You know, the one thing I love about Pathfinder is Pathfinder, you don't need to buy all the books. Core book and maybe the DMG. Other than that, everything's available on Archive and Ethos.
The way I view it, it's usually good to just have the core book on hand. It's never a bad idea to just have it.
Yeah. Matt Cole did a video about 5e. Isn't about anything particularly genre-wise. You have to make it fit.
It's just different. It's different flavors of fantasy. It's not like the one that it is like there's no like set tone or anything for like a D&D like Galarian or Faerun thing. Like you can do whatever genre you want. There's different genres of fantasy. However, there's still just different flavors of fantasy. The idea of like I want to play a sci-fi setting. It's like okay, we're gonna make 5e a sci-fi game. It's like kind of the end of it. It's not that. Like, it's still just 5e. There's only so much you can do. Because at what point are you not playing 5e anymore, and it's just an easier process to like play something else? Because you're still just doing a D20 system. Like, what's the base rules for 5e called? Like the copyrighted the free access D&D rules of just like the idea of advantage and rolling a D20.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's also like the thing I see. I've seen this on Twitter. It's like homebrew content. Like, all right, we made our own homebrew source book that changes rules to the point where essentially you are learning just a new game. So then, like, the level of effort is actually increased. You could just play a new game.
Right. Yeah, OGL. You don't have to.
Everyone's saying that's it. Yeah, you don't have to start. You don't have to tack on like the 5e tag to make something valid. It's like, oh man, I really want to play this like. I really want to play like a dark, kind of like spooky, steampunky like thing. All right, let's make Dishonored in 5e. It's like, no, just play Blades in the Dark. Or I want to do some like Dark West, like Weird West style. Just play Deadlands. Don't just add revolvers to D&D.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? And so when it comes to like the various communities, and not only that, but like when it comes to various communities and stuff like that, a lot of people also feel like the games themselves need to be played in very specific ways.
That one fucking gets on my nerves.
It does for me too, because there's so many, like, it's narrative, right? It's all about telling a story, and everyone's saying you gotta play this way, you gotta play that way, or whatever. It's just, it's frustrating, but it also shows the diversity of how these even simple games really, because when you really break it down, D&D 5e is a very simple game. How it can be played differently from table to table to table.
Yeah, and also, it is important to mention like there's also the thing with there are people out there who really don't want change, and to be fair, I am kind of that person. It takes me a good amount of want to try. At least it did. I used to be really bad of like not wanting to do anything new. Change scares me, just in general. Good change and bad change. However, like I've also met people where very like pointedly, I don't think I would ever invite them to a game that like is a different tabletop game.
Right.
Like, love them to death. I live with one. Love them to death. However, like this man barely fully comprehends 5e rules.
Right, yeah.
So, like, in, like, 5e rules, you know, dirt easy. We played it literally every week. Even twice a week at some point. But,
you know
I could never invite some of my friends to Pathfinder. I have some that could. I have some that wouldn't.
I agree. And Kasich, I also have that same calculation. I calculate about $1 per hour for entertainment stuff. if I can buy a $60 game and play 60 hours, I'm pretty content.
Yeah.
With my expenditure. And that's true. Tabletops are very efficient because you can just play them for hours and hours and hours. I mean, we play 4 hours a week with Pathfinder. That means every month at minimum, it's 16? Yeah, 16 hours.
Yeah. I don't know.
And I actually play 2 games a week, so it's actually 32 hours. So every other month I'm buying a book, essentially, as far as like entertainment value is concerned. And other stuff on top of that. It's really good, and books last for years. You play for a long time, and it feels good, to continue to do so. And not all Pathfinder books are for $60 either. So there's a lot of times where I'm actually just getting net, value out of my time in these games. And that's for most tabletop games. Even like, let's say 10 sessions, right? 10 sessions, 4 hours, pretty easy for a lot of people to do. That's still $40 that you're getting out of that game one time for that one set, and then if you ever play it again, you're just gonna get value on it.
Yeah.
There's just a lot, and there's people who buy games who play it for 10 hours. It was a $60 game and they're just like, I didn't like it that much. So, like the same thing could happen to tabletop and it shouldn't be that big a deal.
Yeah. It's that thing of like, also 5e kind of gives the player the tool to not be fully checked in, I'd say. Like in 5e, like stuff you can do is such on like autopilot with like the DM just increasing their workload that, like, for example, again, I've played with people like that where it's like, if I've talked to them, I was like, oh man, I'd love to do like Pathfinder, like start running that. And then it was looking at this, like the entire group, and I'm like, like 3 of you. No, right. Like 4. 4 of you would thrive in a new system. The other ones I'd have to play a character in Pathfinder, or you'd have a panic attack when I showed you a character sheet because it's different and there are a bigger number, and you have abilities now.
Yeah, you have choices in what you can do every round rather than I attack.
Yeah, because they're like, I can barely handle 1 action, let alone 3. Like that'd be rough.
Yeah, I mean, well, for each combo, like I think your average consumer of tabletop stuff can easily play in most tabletop systems.
They just have to want to play in, like actually learn. They have to have the effort of trying. Some people just don't.
I mean, I don't even think is that. I think first of all, I think some tabletop games need a tutorial setup of like how it works for people, of like just an introductory, like here's like your session 0, right? Here's a tutorial to run your players through the game, and if you don't want to run it, then just don't run it. But like making a game and introducing its concepts to players in very simple ways, it's something that GMs do all the time with their players. Just a game system that actually provides that would be better, so that you can, it's just like, okay, so run this encounter with these enemies, go over the action economy and how attack rolls work. Bam.
Yeah, beginner pamphlets. It's like a beginner box, but like quicker. It's like an encounter or two, where it's like, all right, here's the base rules, like the literal bare minimum, and it's like a little like 10-page leaflet. Yeah. It's like, here you are. But no, like legitimately, I want to say I agree with you, Cal. I want to say that I agree that players can like lots of players can do that, and like if really push comes to shove, they can learn a new system. They have to want to, and some people are like. I played with. If you were at a table with these people, I think you'd agree with me.
I mean, not that I disagree, but I think that's also just a culture thing. Would these same people be willing to try new video games?
In this instance, some of them no. They also didn't do that. They played the same game and they have like 1,000 hours in a single game, and anything else made them freak out because they don't know how to play the new game.
Then they're not the average.
No.
So
it's just, I will say, it's there are people that just won't.
Yeah.
They'd like to. And there's enough of them out there, and like I think that's why 5e attracts people, because it lets people do that. You could not do that for like a VTM or like Pathfinder, because like it just 5e gives the DM the tools to play the game for their players because of how easy and simple it is.
Yeah, I think I agree with that, and I think, but again, we're not talking about that. We're not talking about these small, like, you sound scarred, my guy. You sound scarred by this situation.
Players, it annoyed me so fucking much.
Also, consider people are still playing Skyrim. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Like, I'm not saying this doesn't exist. I'm saying that most gamers in general of all genre types are nomad gamers. They play something until they're bored of it, and then they move on to the next thing. It's why video game industry as a whole is considered profitable in general, because the common denominator is willing to try most styles of game.
Maybe that's why they're playing 5e instead of trying out new games. I don't know. I think 5e attracts that crowd. I think it's why 5e is like so easy like that, because it is a thing of, hey, let's invite such and such person who's not really a nerd, and they'll get into it, but they'll get into it of like, this is an interesting thing. I've never done this before. I think it's more common than like, I think you could easily make like a much bigger split than like, when it's say like, oh, they're not the average. I still think they make up a really decent chunk of the population.
I super disagree.
I played with too many people like that to be like, this is an outlier.
Of a sample size of what, 20 people?
My college, which bigger than that.
You played with every person in your college, you're telling me.
I've seen their games.
How many people have you played with? Tell me.
I can't quantify it. I'm saying of all the I was in a D&D club for a few months, and looking at all the games, I'm like, God damn, this is fucking depressing. I'm going to go back to the Discord game where everyone cares. Because that's why I was like so attached to like these games like we did, because I'm like, everyone cares in these games. No one cared here.
Well, yeah. But I'm just saying, like, the thing is, right, you look everywhere online, and the thing is, right, the people who are most likely to dip into homebrew content or like DM's Guild content are players, actually.
Yeah.
They're asking for more content thrown into the game more often than not. That's why there's the meme of the player who comes up to the DM going, hey, so I found this homebrew. And the DM rolls their eyes.
It's the most like broken or weird shit ever.
I know for a fact players are more willing to look into other things. The big reason why I think D&D is so, I guess, stagnant, as I guess is the way you're more putting it, is why it feels stagnant, is because you have to have a DM run games for you. It's more of an issue of DMs not wanting to try out new games, or players not finding people to actually run games. And yeah, don't get me wrong, I 100% agree that there's people out there that just want to stick with like D&D because it's familiar, and that's why they kind of shoehorn it into everything, because they feel like they can. Because they look at D&D and they're like, you could do that. Why would we have to learn a new thing when we can just change D&D 5e? But that's also because there's not a culture that's easily consumable or easily like found about actually trying new tabletop that makes it more accessible.
There does need to be a thing where it's like more acceptable to just try new stuff. Like there's so many people who are like, I play this and nothing else, and that other game's bad because it's different. That's weird. There should be like I see it on Twitter and I'm like, please, just for the love of God, you can play multiple games. You don't need to just play one. You can play fucking like D&D and Pathfinder in your same lifetime. It's acceptable. It's okay. No one's gonna get upset at you, or no one that matters is gonna get upset at you.
And that's the thing as well. And I also think that tabletop is kind of alluding to a cast that Kent mentioned here as well. I think as well, tabletop games need to be better designed for user interface, more better UI elements to make the games easier to run. Because some games are easy to run, perspectively speaking. Other games are a complete nightmare because there's just a bazillion rules. As someone who's had to, in the last year, learn like 8 games or something like that, like, I know that for a fact. But I also know that there are games out there that can make the experience feel very smooth and have more emergent gameplay where the game gets more complex as you play rather than needing to have such a depth of understanding when you first start the game.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the big things that come with this idea that like everyone's like, well, D&D 5e is so easy, why play anything differently? The thing is, the people who say this, the people who feel this way in general, don't understand how incredible other tabletop games are. I mean, how can you? When you play nothing but D&D 5e that doesn't even have half the mechanics that other games do, how can you know what's out there? It's beyond your understanding. And it's because, like I said, there's not enough like media out there that people want to consume that show how awesome other games are. Because Dimension 20, Critical Role, a lot of other, like popular podcasts / YouTube channels, whatever, play D&D 5th edition because everyone does. And they don't go out of that because they don't want to alienate their core audience, who are D&D 5e players.
Mm-hmm.
But if more games, if more people of relevance, if more, I don't know, better presentation style things started making games look more interesting, it would be, I think people would be a lot more willing to try out new games because they would see other people having a ridiculous amount of fun playing them. Because you know what, actually, I think that's what that would get me to watch more tabletop content. If I could find content of people playing other games and making it look entertaining and build gamer envy, because I get gamer envy real bad. When I watch someone play a game that I want to play or looks interesting to me, I'm like, I want to play it. I can't buy it right now, so I'm going to watch you to kind of get that fixed a little bit. If tabletop could be presented in a way that would be more enticing in that way, I think that'd be interesting. Because honestly, I'm hungry for more interesting tabletops. Honestly. If I hear about a tabletop that has some unique systems or does something really interesting, that's why I actually am so fascinated with Lancer. Because Lancer is actually really kind of cool, and I love the idea of how mechs are built and how you build your character.
Yeah. It's so unique and cool.
And it's like, I want to play that. But you look up anything for Lancer, and you get people going, all right, so you go up and you attack him, right? Go ahead and roll your dice. Yeah?
Yeah.
Hits, damage.
Let's be the change we want to see. I'm actually, the more we're talking about this, the more I'm absolutely invested in the idea of doing Riptide off-season. The fucking idea how into this idea I am, because that's all I've been saying for the fucking months and months we've been doing this, Cam, is I would love if we had the time. What if we finish a part of Riptide? Let's go do a 10 session break thing. Mm-hmm. Same time slot. Everyone's free that time. We'll have everyone there, and we bring them into these games that they've already got a taste of. Now we get the thing. Such a good idea.
I think so too.
Oh my god.
Why I brought it up.
Also, let it be known, Cass said something very positive about 5e. Everyone pay attention to that. Now I also will say, I have said for a long time, I think that's 5e's strongest suit. And I still play and enjoy 5e. Granted, 5e that I play is a modified version of 5e. That is actually kind of more fun. Yes. By the way, that's a good thing you point that out. The suggestions are still open. We've got some more submissions of tabletop requests. We got more. I've read them all and I have a list. Add more to it. I've heard Honey Heist. I want to know about it. Toss it in.
Yeah.
But yeah, 5e. That's the benefit of it. You can just run something super easy, and players don't have to be as invested in other as they would in other games. They can fully do the checkout, and then just do the same thing every turn. Like there's no thought that is required for 5e a lot of times. So it really does encourage and draw in the players that don't really want to care, because that's the thing. There's just people in any situation where they just don't want to care. So it's the same thing over and over again. It's people who watch the same few shows on repeat over and over and over again.
And now that you kind of bring it up that way as well, I also don't think that those kind of people who are they want to play D&D and nothing else because it's familiar to them are really what make up what I guess the core of the tabletop community is, not on a number basis, but on the people who will continuously tune into tabletop related stuff is people who actually it's kind of like people who are a big fans of Game of Thrones, but only because of the series, not the books, not anything. Don't care about the lore really, just care about who's gonna die this week.
Mm-hmm.
And when it's done, when they're no longer doing the thing, they're out, they're gone, they're on to the next thing that they can partially pay attention to. I think what makes a good core of the community, because you go on Twitter, there's people who absolutely put way too much into tabletop as far as what its value should be in their life. Who care way too much about tabletop. More from my perspective, as someone who is made it their lifelong hobby,
mm-hmm.
who just overinvest into it and who care about the space. I do honestly think that there is still a very big community out there of people who are actually interested, because one thing that I've done as well in all my years of running tabletop games is pick up those kids who played tabletop and they're like, I kind of played it this one time. It was okay. I'm like, hey, play my game. And then they're like, oh, this is what I was kind of hoping for when I started playing. But the game before was just not this well done. And now that I see what actual tabletop looks like, you got me hooked. Good job. That kind of stuff of picking off the people who do really like the hobby, but are just not in a situation where they can really get the most out of it. There's a lot of opportunity, I think. I think there's actually genuinely a lot of opportunity to expand the fields outside of D&D. I think now that D&D and tabletop in general is kind of a set culture, that it's okay. It's now a cool thing to play D&D, which is so crazy to think, especially when I was growing up. It's ripe for change. I think getting away from corporate Dungeons and Dragons is the next step. It's ever taken an art course for your college of studying the cycles of art?
I've taken film analysis stuff at the very least.
But there's always it's art always moves in certain kind of rhythms of there's a thing that becomes sensationalized, and then it becomes more about the different expressions of that, and then it becomes more about the niche and the new, and then it becomes about the expansion of niche into the new contemporary, and yada yada yada, and cycle and cycle and cycle. And I think tabletop is kind of just ripe for that kind of growth, especially when you look at other forms of media like video games as well, where video games came out, it was new, sensationalized, games were a lot of effort was put in, the developers often really cared about what they were making, and then it got super corporate, and all the corporations were making the big title games, FIFA 2000, Call of Duty 900, all those kind of Infinite Series games, it feels like.
Yeah.
And then in recent years, the indie games scene has been growing massively to the point where we've gotten several sensations like Five Nights at Freddy's, blew up from the indie scene. Undertale, all these other kind of games have been like super sensationalized. And then we've expanded on those to terrible degrees, I might add. There's so much Five Nights at Freddy's shit now that's lost a lot of the magic of what it initially was. But
True. It's a lot. It's certainly also like the age demographic for that stuff. It's the endless series that just cycles in people who give a shit.
Yeah. But and now like a lot of the big corporations are actually starting to suffer for their bad decisions and their crappy design, because so many people are making games nowadays that when a AAA company comes out with a hot pile of garbage, people are just not picking it up anymore. Game companies are having to try a little bit harder now because other people are picking up that slack and making games of actual value. And I think that's just kind of how it is with Dungeons and Dragons. Dungeons and Dragons was super niche, but then it's become super sensationalized. And I feel like the more it becomes sensationalized and bloats and festers because Witches of the Coast doesn't give a damn about D&D actually.
Yeah. I have a lot of people in my life who were spurned by that.
Yeah, Battlefield 2042.
Yep.
But because D&D doesn't care, or Wizards of the Coast doesn't care about D&D actually. They put so little into it that they don't care because Magic the Gathering makes them so much money.
That, and as well, it's the very basic economic principle of if a thing is making you money and you still need to maximize profits, the best thing you can do, like economically, is lower the amount of effort you put into it or like care.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Where it's that thing of like, yeah, we could invest more time and effort into this thing and make the same amount of money, or we could, do less, make more. That's what happens when things are just fixed rate, like I guess budget or no, what is it? Revenue increase.
Yeah.
The revenue is going to stay the same, so all you can do is lower the amount of money you put into it to increase money that comes out.
Yep. And I feel like in the next 5-10 years, tabletop is going to start seeing some big upsets.
I certainly would love to see 5e kicked off its throne.
I agree. It's kind of like World of Warcraft. World of Warcraft was genre defining for a long time, I might add.
Really long time.
15 years, something like that.
Like the point where everyone fucking knew what WoW was.
And now in the MMO scene, it's been kicked. People are not interested in Blizzard anymore. They're not interested in World of Warcraft. They release an expansion and a bunch of people come back. They get some money out of it, but it's just no longer holding the same numbers that it used to. And other MMOs are really coming out. And actually, if you've been paying attention to the MMO scene at all, there's been some pretty ambitious projects that have been worked on that people are really getting invested in.
Like New Worlds.
New World was okay. I think it was very short-sighted, but even then it shows like other companies are starting to hit back Amazon, through in their way. And to be fair, there's a lot of people like New World, and New World's been coming out with some new updates lately that people have been really getting into again. I haven't been, but other people.
Yeah, it's always interesting because that's actually why I think they did like Warcraft Classic or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Like, hey guys, we know you've hated how we've progressed it, so you're gonna play this version of the older game that you couldn't play anymore. That also true. It just like fucking collapsed, and then also just Blizzard being Blizzard, like
Well, yeah,
Blizzard ain't the best.
It was just a company that got too rich, paid the price, and Riot Games, who has literally had hit after hit of things they produced. I know there's been a lot of controversy with their shooter game.
Valorant?
Yeah. There's been a lot of controversy with Valorant and like some of its monetization stuff that's been going on lately.
Yeah.
But like a lot of the games Riot has been coming out with have been straight bangers. Arcane was so good.
They're also
And
making new games that I'm super excited for, like the fighting game, or I think they're straight up making like an actual RPG, like action game.
yeah,
Because I
they're
love the world of League. I wish there were other ways to experience it, because
exactly.
League of Legends is lame.
And they also have an MMO that's currently being worked on, you know. Final Fantasy, one of the top runners for a very long time, overtook World of Warcraft. Like, D&D, Wizards of the Coast's D&D is a titan, but it's a titan slowly being crushed by its own inadequacy as time goes on. Because, honestly, as much as I have enjoyed D&D, as much as I know a lot of people around here have been enjoying D&D itself, a lot of people are becoming discontent with the books coming out. One D&D has been a big controversy when it should have been something big for the game, you know. People are excited for like the 3D elements, but they're not sure how the rules are going to change. And honestly, yeah, Hasbro's great. I mean, it's a game, and this has nothing to do. And I'll state this as many times as anyone needs to hear. This has nothing to do with people who actually love D&D or the idea of D&D itself. The world that was built, everything, the community, none of that. D&D will fail because the company will begin to fail to provide for its community. And that's it. And D&D will never go away. I don't ever think it will. I think it'll always be kind of at this point where it will still be a top contender for a long time. But if they don't take care of the game, it's just going to keep festering like it is. And I think people are becoming more and more discontented with it, especially the people who do care about the game itself. And what happens when Critical Role gets big enough where they can look at D&D and be like, we're going to do a new system this season just to shake things up for our own self, you know, just to have something else. And then suddenly D&D just loses the golden goose. And the community who follows Critical Role as a whole is like, oh, there's other games that, you know, are out there, and start looking into it. All it takes is for one of these like groups that are making D&D what it is today to get big enough that they can cut ties with it and not lose everything. And I think Critical Role could do it, honestly.
Like, imagine them in, like, can you imagine the Critical Role crew in fucking Vampire the Masquerade?
That's what I was thinking.
Imagine
That's
how
my
hyped that
exact
would be.
thought. Exactly. I was just like, you know who could pull off VTM really, really well? Critical Role.
Oh, like, imagine the quality of roleplay in a setting that does social stuff.
Like, it's just a matter of time, you know. Critical Role, I think, mostly sticks with D&D because, one, it's easy, and obviously a lot of the D&D or the Critical Role cast are not the most tabletop gamers of tabletop gamers, you know. But, you know, they've been playing it for a long time, and they're probably getting sick of D&D at this point, right? You know, trying to get the most out of it, being constrained by the same kind of fantasy genre that they've been in. Of course, they've been making up their own things, and Matt Mercer's been doing a fantastic job of making a very wonderful setting that is more interesting than most D&D setting stuff that's been coming out lately.
True.
So, you know, what happens when they just are like, okay, we have so much going for us, we have so much merch going for us, we have several campaigns that are still getting a bunch of people watching it, we're expanded out, we're gonna do a new system, and then suddenly D&D is gonna see a massive drop, I guarantee, you know. And once people start realizing that they can go outside of D&D's influence, Wizards of the Coast is going to have a much bigger problem. And I think more or less that's true, Length. I think for sure that was the reason for this swap. Because to be fair, Pathfinder First Edition is a much chunkier game.
Yeah.
And to be fair as well, I've seen them struggle with 5th edition rules. So, you know, like, and they didn't used to play nearly as much as they do now. So, you know, whatever issues they were probably running into before, Matt probably helped solve with everything. But
yeah, I know he added some Pathfinder isms into his game.
But I'm just saying, like, I hope, you know, and this is me, right? A big fan of Pathfinder, looking over at my bookshelf that has 100 pounds of Pathfinder books. I hope that if Critical Role switches game systems, they don't go to Pathfinder.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
Because the last thing I think that the tabletop community needs is another Tolkien-esque inspired fantasy game to be its showrunner. I think it needs a big shakeup. I think Vampire the Masquerade could be huge. I think Lancer would be fun. I think there's a lot of other genres that people should see in tabletop. And to be fair, Critical Role has kind of dipped different genres here and there a little bit.
Yeah,
and
played stuff. Or like
some other stuff as well. But I'm just talking about they come up with their next campaign and it's VTM. The tabletop world is going to shift. When a player like that, of that size, decides they're going to try something else, their audience will inherently follow. And they have an audience of several million. Easy. Yeah,
that's God, because it's like the one sci-fi setting system I can see is like, oh yeah, there's a Starfinder. It's like, yeah, I don't really like Starfinder that much. I want a cool sci-fi one, yeah.
Don't forget that medieval fantasy is big because people just like it more than other settings.
Yeah.
I mean,
but like, imagine.
I would even argue that necessarily. Not to say that it's not huge. I think there's a reason why, you know, RPGs and everything set in those settings are huge, and I think people really like it. But it's just something that industries haven't invested that much into, but they're starting to do so more now. And there's still, I mean, even if, right, people do other things, it's not like the medieval fantasy setting is going to go away. I don't think anyone wants it to go away.
Nah, because at the end of the day, like medieval fantasy stuff is just, yeah, I think it's probably one of the most popular like genres.
Well, it also takes in from mythology.
Yeah, like there's just so much that can like be encompassed by fantasy that I think I think one of the reasons that it is so like widespread of like different subgenres and all that type is just because how popular it is. Because like I'll say like fucking there's some absolutely phenomenal fantasy properties out there. And as much as I say I love sci-fi, I can name so many more phenomenal fantasy series than I can sci-fi series. It's stupidly popular. And like, yeah, I think it's just, I don't know, it's a very interesting thing that's just in like our culture. I would love to see like a giant tabletop titan like take on a different genre, but I don't think it would ever happen. I think realistically, if you know Critical Role does ever change, it would probably be to Pathfinder. I think it's the most realistic thing. As much as I also agree, I would like to see it be something else. I would love it if they propped up some fucking cool indie like tabletop game.
I don't know.
That'd be sick.
I think the Critical Role cast understands the value of narrative and will move to anything, because the thing is, right, when Critical Role started D&D 5th edition, D&D 5th edition wasn't that big. It was big because it was the newest D&D system, but it really wasn't that big at that time. The renaissance of tabletop came with Critical Role investing in D&D 5th edition, and D&D 5th edition being one of the most successful forms of D&D to date. I don't think that they would go to Pathfinder just because it's in the same genre.
I don't think it's the same genre. I think it'd probably be like, we played Pathfinder before. Let's play the new Pathfinder, because it's still familiarity. It's the idea of like
Maybe.
they're still in the same they're the same side of the coin, like Pathfinder and D&D. So like it's like, oh man, I don't want to play D&D anymore, but I still want to kind of have that familiarity without jumping into like a brand new thing. All right, Pathfinder. It's just like the next answer.
Maybe. I don't know. I think I disagree, mostly just because I feel like on a conceptual level, D&D and Pathfinder are more or less the same thing, just with different rules. Don't get me wrong. Pathfinder, I feel, is a much better game.
No, yeah, I think
overall.
that's what it would be. I don't think that I think it'd be putting more thought into something than they do. I think if anything, it wouldn't be here's all the stuff we need to take into account. I think it'd be new game. We did Pathfinder 1E. What if we tried Pathfinder 2E? And like that's just how a conversation like would go.
Maybe.
I don't think it'd be as heavily considered, even though I also fully would say perfect world. I want to see them run VTM, even if it's for like a one shot.
I think VTM. Sorry, what?
They do so well in that. Like,
they would.
Like,
yeah.
Great actors playing a social setting, like system. Like, fuck yeah, that's all I want.
I mean, I think VTM would stand a pretty good chance when put up to Pathfinder. Like, honestly, if we're talking realistically, I think the Critical Role cast would look and they would see, okay, what other tabletop games are doing well out there, and they'd probably see Pathfinder 2E, and I think that would be a consideration for them as well. But they would probably also see stuff like VTM that people are really into, and the Critical Role cast, especially one Taliesin Jaffe, has very much shown an interest in before, and Matt Mercer has played VTM before. So has Taliesin Jaffe. That's another system you can't forget. They've also done before as well.
True.
They even had, I think they had a VTM one shot, did they not? Or maybe that was just a D&D one. I know they had.
I know a lot of their one shots. I know a lot of their one shots were just 5e.
Yeah.
I mean, I would absolutely love it. I just think if anything, it's going to be like Pathfinder, other stuff there. I think if they get an announcement tomorrow, hey y'all, we're changing systems, I think you can make a very, very safe bet they're just going to jump to Pathfinder. I would be very, very safe putting my money on it.
I would give it 70%.
Yep, I'd say it's very good odds.
I would say 70%, but that's still not insignificant. 30% for something else like VTM, I think, is still not too bad, honestly. And I don't know. It's too early to tell. The tabletop community as a whole, it's still too early to tell, because the discontent with 5th edition is not at the boiling point yet.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think it will be for a few years at least, at the very least. When 1D&D comes out, if it's a super stinker, that will be the start of the decline. And if it comes out okay, they'll probably push it back for 5-10 more years, maybe. Mm-hmm. It's not something that's going to happen immediately, but it's something that's going to happen as far as genres are concerned in the near future. As far as like what's happening. And I don't know. I mean, don't get me wrong. I do thoroughly enjoy medieval fantasy, high fantasy, Renaissance style settings. I do, personally. I have gotten a little tired of it though, and I would prefer to see something more of like a modern fantasy done right, with more of like modern fantasy, maybe like futuristic, but not like sci-fi. Mm-hmm. Modern setting, I think, is one I would really like to do. And then something like Lancer, I think, is very much as well. I don't think Shadowrun, mostly because Shadowrun's a very punk style, And I'm not that into punk, honestly. I like more fantasy intrigue style stuff, I should say. Like, I want the setting to feel more like rational and reasonable. Punk settings always come across to me as a very particular genre of people, you know, like punk settings.
I like punk setting. Well, I like cyberpunk and the lore of Shadowrunner, at least. I will say I like the lore of Shadowrun more than I like the rules.
That's true too.
Yeah.
But I mean, just like Shadowrun, as far as like an actual setting style game, I don't know. I'm not very much into punk aesthetics or style, personally. Would I play them? Yes. In fact, Lancer has punk, like cyberpunk aesthetics in it, actually. Especially when you start looking into like horse and all that kind of stuff like that. But I like my stuff to be a little bit more on the contemporary side of things, I think. Regardless of my interests, though.
Lancer lore is sick. Lancer
lore is sick. I think that the genre cannot be completely run by Wizards of the Coast's D&D forever. I think it will collapse. And when it comes afterwards, who knows?
Yeah, I certainly would. I always love market shakeups. I hate seeing any form of like monopoly. It's not a full monopoly. I just hate the like, this is the one place you go if you want to play tabletop games. No, there are cool things. Do the other cool things.
Yeah, and I think, you know, spice, or what is variety is the spice of life. It's something that I think that the genre as a whole needs more spice, needs more variety. There needs to be more games out there, and not just. Something I hate is when people try to spice things up and they just do the same genre but different over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I want to see stuff like, honestly, despite Anima being a medieval fantasy style game, it really isn't. when you break it down to like its actual components, it's high fantasy that has sci-fi that just so happens to take place in a medieval world.
It's whatever the writers were interested at the time. I fully believe it is just, and the Anima like devs were just like watched an anime and were like, that's in here, that's going in the book, toss it on the pile. I just watched Bleach, we're doing Bleach now. Like that's what it feels like, and I'm completely into it. Listen, I'm a Hideo Kojima fanboy. Like, I respect him because he's just like, I like this band. Now everyone else has to like them. And it's like, yeah, you go. You shove in that thing you like that doesn't fully fit in this area. Hell yeah. I respect it.
But, you know, like, honestly, stuff like that I would love to see more of. Stuff that really is genre breaking in itself. Like, Anima Beyond Fantasy is not just a medieval fantasy game. It's a medieval fantasy game when it feels like it.
Yeah.
And every other time it's like, yes. Mechanoids, robots, science experiments, running into like modern day aesthetics in the setting. Also, there's like cosmic powers and stuff beyond understanding. Like,
yeah,
it's a wacky one, but I love that kind of stuff too. Though I love like it's like that when it was a Yasuke or Yasuke, the one Black Samurai anime that came out, where it's just like, it looks like, you know, Edo period Japan.
And then the
samurai, and then there's a mech suit, and you're like, what?
Yeah,
and
it was like,
no one bats an eye. It's just like,
was...
oh god, it's the Emperor's Royal Guard, and you're just like, what?
It was like so fucking funny when I was just like, browsing Netflix with my roommates, and we're like, all right. Oh, hey, Yasuke, I know that guy. Oh, that's this character. Yeah, this seems like an historical anime. Oh, okay. Like this started like the water froze over, and it's like, oh, okay. I guess there's some magic. Is that what? It's just a mech descends. It is the perfect storm of just like that trailer on Netflix. Like what is this? And also, it was very good.
What, you never heard of the ancient Japanese mech suits?
Yeah.
That's even technically that wasn't even ancient. That's something that was happening, right around the time of the Cowboys.
Yeah.
But or a little before the time of the Cowboys. But still, it's like I love genre mixes that are very. Sucker Punch is also very interesting. I love genre mixes that are really good at blending it in a way that doesn't feel super out of place. It's kind of why I like Final Fantasy stuff so much. Because, like, most settings for Final Fantasy, not all of them, but most settings for Final Fantasy, is you have a world that's so dangerous that everyone kind of lives in these more, like, simple country style hovel kind of settings, like villages and everything like that. And they don't get big and they don't, like, advance because monsters exist, like, in the surrounding area. But when one culture does dominate its field, it's suddenly mech, it's suddenly magitech, and then you get people running around fighting with swords and magic, fighting against flying mech suits. And it's still reasonable to expect that the protagonists will win because they got magic on their side.
Yeah.
Well, the other side is powered by magic, but not utilizing magic, I love those kind of genre mixes that have very wide ranges, so you can have aesthetics of all types if you want, but simultaneously the world doesn't break its own setting by, having that stuff in there. Like the big corporations or whatever, it's not like they haven't taken over the entire world yet because they don't want to, or that, like something's stopping them. It's mostly of, why would big corporation care about small villages out in the boonies? They're already super invested in, like, consuming the planet's life force as an energy source or whatever. Yeah. And so, like, they're not controlling the world because they don't have to. They already are at the top, while everyone else is struggling just to survive. They're thriving, and it doesn't break the setting, and people don't fight the big evil organizations because they got fucking guns. And all the villagers are like, well, shit, well, do whatever you say, big man. If you want to take over a village, fine, we'll just be moving somewhere else. So I like genre mixes, actually. I don't think any setting really benefits from hard following its own genre. I mean, Pathfinder doesn't. Pathfinder has straight up androids and an android god and a machine god and Tesla, like, style tech in its medieval setting. It just doesn't got mechs, really.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there's some mech things, and technically Starfinder is a part of the Pathfinder yet. Yeah. Starfinder's technically a part of the same universe, but
they'll get down there at some point. They'll discover mech technology or something.
I mean, they already could. There's already, like, drones and automatons and such like that. But I would just prefer if the setting was more blended. Yes.
Yeah, I kind of like just tossing in, like, different genres and stuff. Like, seems like for Galarian, it's just whatever region you go to is going to be a different style. It's like style of fantasy, which I like. I like that. I like it where there's just a lot of variety, so I don't get bored. Because I get bored very quickly in the same thing over and over again.
I don't know. Pathfinder is not mixed enough for me. It's not like anywhere near like the level of anima that I would like for my genre blending, personally. But there's a lot, honestly, and the genre is still pretty young, despite being around for 50 years plus at this point, right? As far as like overall genre media is concerned, like things like movies and like written works and everything like that are older than obviously D&D, and they've been going through genre shifts, and I wouldn't imagine tabletop as a general genre wouldn't do the same.
Yeah.
So but yeah, so it's just a lot of things that like I think there's a lot to look forward to. I think a lot of what the community is right now is the community reflects the state of the game, which is the community is constantly evolving. It's forming its own subsects. People are disagreeing because they're playing the game differently. People are starting to pay attention to the actual companies making the games they're making nowadays, and there's a lot going on that is going to cause the overall genre of game style tabletop to go through some big changes. I feel like the whole everyone just plays D&D because it's same and familiar, that mentality will change when we get more stuff available that's easy to consume, I should say. It's kind of like home computers, right? Not everyone had home computers when they first started coming out, but eventually the technology became so simple that now everyone has them. You don't have to be a coder to use your computer anymore. The computers don't break down as frequently where you need to take it into a professional to see it. A lot of stuff can be fixed either at home or just doesn't break that badly. And I think tabletop is very much in that space of the genre is going to keep evolving where it's going to be more and more easy, accessible. I'm excited for the tabletop peripherals, for the stuff that you use to play tabletop to become more accessible. Imagine programs that work pretty much like a game, where it's like you're playing the game, you can get on with your friends on your Roll20 or whatever, but it's more like a game where it automates and does a lot of things for you that you can use to amplify your gaming.
Or like a dual disc, but for Pathfinder.
Did I lose you a while ago?
What? No. That's a third party peripheral. The dual disc. But it's like you can place down your ability cards.
I feel like you only deviate this badly when you just zone down to the conversation.
No. I'm understanding and I agree. However, when you said third party peripheral that you used to make the game more accessible, I'm like a dual disc.
This is the man I choose to work with.
Am I fucking wrong?
Yes!
Agree with me here. Is a dual disc not a third party peripheral that makes the game like, you can use to play a game?
Yes, but how's that apply to tabletop?
I don't know, maybe it's like for your spell cards.
Shut up, Alex.
See? People are already
Don't enable him. Don't let.
This means I'm right. Your mic cut out, so I assume you agree with me.
I don't. I pulled the cord out. I was so angry.
Yeah, if it gets too automated, it just turns into a video game, which then you could just play like Pillars of Eternity or like Baldur's Gate.
I disagree. Because it's still a narrative game. There's still more that can be done to make the experience better. What's the difference of using pencils and paper and using a digital media?
Yeah, it's the I don't think we're any the one I always picture when that's brought up is like the reality of like, I mean, we currently have like the AI storytellers, but imagine like an AI DM. A fucking wild
That is a different conversation, though. That changes the inherent of way, like, it can be. Yeah, see, and that's the thing.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we're saying. Is I'm not talking about automation to the point of you might as well be playing a video game. I'm talking about automating the experience. When you click your character on your virtual tabletop, it shows you how far you can move, so you don't have to count squares anymore. You know.
Yeah, it's like the Magic the Gathering like duels or arena to what normal Magic is. It's the stuff that's like, yeah, you could remember all these rules, but the game will just automate it for you.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, like Foundry and like other systems, like it's coming out. I'm just talking about a much more easy to access one, because
That's why I'm so excited for. That's like the only part of one D&D I think is cool is the thing they're making, like that like virtual thing. I think that's hype. I hope it is literally like you can play it like CRPG with the DM, because like the thing I love, the thing I want is it was available for a while. The D&D the Divinity Original Sin 2 DM tools, where you literally could just make your own like tabletop adventure thing, but your DM is literally created like a area. So it's like they control the enemies and do all this stuff, but it's all like you're playing through a D&D campaign in a video game. That shit is hype. I would love that. Imagine if a game release really you could like do that. It'd be sick. But you still like a DM was still in control. It was just all virtual tools and like in a CRPG.
yeah, I don't think you're understanding what I mean by peripherals.
No,
It's not. No, I'm talking to the audience, not you.
No.
But like what Kazak's saying here, like that's not what I'm talking about. A peripherals is something that makes the game easier. It's ways to interface with it better. You know, there's literally no difference in the actual experience if you're using a VTT versus pen and paper. You know what I mean? When I say automate the experience, I'm talking about making it so that all the stuff that you normally do, that you do on pen and paper, yeah, very useful for accessibility, yeah, just gets automated. You click an attack against an enemy, and rather than having to go and click the token and adjust the health, it automatically reduces the health. Like, VTTs already do that. Some do.
That's why I think the comparison of like a CRPG with but you have a DM, I think is like it's just that, but a little simple, like a simpler tool. And it's just you learn how to use that, and like yeah, you can create these virtual spaces that handle that for you, like you are playing a CRPG, but it's like still normal rules, and you can go about it the same. It's just like kind of I guess a skeleton of a CRPG game would be, but it's a Pathfinder like program you can use.
Yeah, that you can set. It's like VTT already does this pretty much. I just think it can be better. I think it can be done in a way that's a lot more efficient and easier to digest for the players and everything that's going on as well. And it doesn't have to change. Like the only thing that I will give is, what do you do about players who are thinking outside the box? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, who are going and like, oh, can I pick up a stone and throw it at the chandelier and knock the lights out, kind of stuff, or that kind of stuff. I think that's why it can't be like a video game. It's why it's not all like based on that. I'm talking peripherals. I'm talking like a player can do that. The GM can click, remove the light source easier, and everything. But that doesn't mean like a lot of the other stuff can't still just be, automated for you.
Yeah, that's the stuff that makes it like the interesting like dilemma when it comes to building a tool like that, is the anticipating a D&D player and coding and stuff like that. And because it would be like I love that tool. I think it'd be like super hype. like yeah, the simple stuff 100% would love to be automated. Click a spell, it gives you a little radius. Like imagine it does like the straight up divinity thing where I'm gonna cast fireball and it shows you the line and the radius. Don't have to worry about that stuff, like counting that out. Sick tool. And then it's just that thing of making sure it's bare bones enough that a DM can anticipate a player doing something, or bare bones enough to be like let players do things that aren't standard actions. Because if you make it too rigid, it forces people to like, all right, now you have to play as rules is written, and altering it is like stupid hard or annoying. Like that's like the interesting I guess challenge it would be. I would certainly love a thing like that, and I'd love to see how it be developed. It's just like that's the immediate worry is the takes out like, all right, players, if you want this to this tool to function, we have to play as rules is written. And then imagine having to like actually have this thing play out the rule of pick up your items if you go down, and you can't turn that off.
Right. Well, again, a peripheral is just an aid. Yeah. It's something to add.
I get the central idea of it. It's just the tool that does the stuff that would automate it is then you have to figure out what stuff is automated, what stuff is player DM handled, so then you can strike that balance. Because you go too far one side, you have to play everything rules is written to fully use the tool. Mm-hmm. The other side, it's so basic. Why aren't you just using like Roll20 and doing it manually? It's that balance. It's the tricky thing of coding anything. And then also it's the idea of if you're making a tool like that, you have to anticipate and like code, like program stuff in that is specifically like a player doing player things. And the adage of like, you can't anticipate your players. They'll always do something fucking weird.
Well, I mean, that's just why you create like rule breaks in your coding where the GM or the player can be like free move. And so, rather than forcing the player to only move their stride distance, for instance, they can now move wherever because the GM like took that off, with a button press, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and then it's the thing of there's just thousands of other rule variants that would mess with that.
Yeah, and that's why
I think it's a fantastic idea. I'd love the idea of taking out like the stuff like that, like measuring distances. Oh, because how does my cone hit? Where can I position myself for the most optimal thing? And then it's just like I would love a thing that does that. Like and also I'm kind of just realizing I want a ruler tool in Roll20 that gives me radiuses and like cones and lines and shit.
Oh,
that'd be so fucking nice.
I would. I still need to make templates. I could make a square templates for just like all the varieties. But
it would just be cool if like players could freely measure, like the ruler tool. Imagine that. That'd be hype.
Yeah, but then it's like you click and you do your cone spell, and then it produces a cone that as you move your mouse around, it changes the direction, and then you click and it finalizes.
Yeah,
and
stuff
then, like that. Auto removes the health of the NPCs or whatever. Like a peripheral is just there to aid the experience. It's not meant to replace it. You know what I mean?
No, I get the idea of it. I know what a peripheral is. It's just the line of like more complicated Roll20, and then the other end of the spectrum is CRPG, where you just have a DM instead of a video game. Like it's the spectrum, and I think the interesting thing about that idea is where in the spectrum does it lie? Like where leaning towards what? Mm-hmm. And I like both options. I think Roll20 with better accessibility tools, and then a CRPG where a DM can play and like make a game for you is absolutely hype. Both of those are great things that should be done.
Yeah, I agree. And I think there's also space for a lot of wiggle room between the two. Like things, for instance, where maybe you just have very visual players, and having an actual like battle map with animations and everything is better for them than something that's a lot more theater of the mind or looking at tokens.
There's one that does that. I can't remember what it is, but there's actually this one game I keep seeing advertised where it is literally like your DM creates like a fully virtual map, even with like NPCs and social stuff, where it's like, oh, instead of saying I go and talk to such and such character, they can physically walk to the character and start a dialogue. Like, you know, then it's like role play. But it's like this giant DM tool that kind of does stuff like that, but it more or less is like a giant visual aid with a really good map making and like scene making tools. I don't remember the name of it. I just keep seeing it on fucking like Twitter and TikTok or something. I just remember it's like this really fun pixel art style. Yeah, like it looks hype, and I think it'd be a fun tool to like point out, but I don't know if it like automates play. It just creates this like yeah, no, the prep time's insane. You have to have a dedicated DM, but like a DM that wants to do that that's perfect for them.
See, so here's my ideal peripherals. What I would want as like a GM for like my games. I would like a game that if I set down the tokens and everything, I can click the tokens, and when I click the tokens, it has all their actions and then a button I can press to like add effects to it. And when I click to the stride action, it shows me how many they can move, and it does all the math if I click like attack or whatever. And then I would like an actual battle map that has very like it allows you to kind of gamify it to the point where if you want as well, the GM can break it. You just hit like a break rule button, and then you can do whatever you want with that token or adjust damage or whatever. And then I would like actually for the non-combat scenes to be a scene that has a background, and if you run into an NPC, I can click an NPC like sidebar window, and an image will show up of like a graphic of that NPC talking, and then the players can jump into the scene with their characters. And each of your images has like 3 different like emotional sets that you can click to change the unit for like roleplay purposes. That's actually what I would like to have for peripherals. That kind of stuff where you can have visual like characters talking to characters. It can be basic, it can be very like old RPG style where it's just one character on one side and the party on the other, you know, talking. Every time they talk, they motion or whatever. If they get angry, they can make an angry face or whatever. Just with simple button presses to kind of emphasize the roleplay stuff. I think that kind of stuff, that's what I want for my peripherals anyway. That kind of stuff where it enhances those scenes and makes them something more visually interesting for the players and viewers if you're doing live play stuff as well. And then stuff that just makes combat go quickly, because honestly, anything that makes combat faster is good in my eyes, as long as it doesn't break the original purpose of combat.
It does sound like just a perfect like live play tool. If you're a streamer, you want to use that. It makes a lot of those like stream graphics and like in the program rather than having to fully create and pay for people to do it for you. Like that, that does sound like the perfect live play like thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you could do like a Hero Forge style character creator with all like the different add-ons and everything, you could do a lot of that.
Have that, and all the facial features should be like the Oblivion faces, like when you're doing the bartering.
Well, Kasich, I do use battle maps, actually. So, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't play with a lot of prep, true, but I have enough extra stuff on hand and have made pre-maps before to run things and set things up. So, I don't know how that would solve any of what we're talking about, because that doesn't change any of that. Clicking tokens to see what their actions are isn't something that a battle map fixes. You know what I mean? So,
yeah, just roll 20 with a lot of extra tools.
Yeah, we're just tools that also just enhance the experience, make things easier, you know, simpler, so that you don't have to do all the normal rigmarole for your characters. Because like, even if it takes you 5 seconds, right, to count squares to see where you move, with how often you move in games, those 5 seconds take up time.
Yeah, like
over the course of an entire campaign that
Eh.
could be dedicated to other stuff.
Like imagine it's you just have your token, enter a movement value, and it just highlights like like your distance. It's like, oh, that's my max distance. I can just walk over there. So you just drag all the way over there.
You know, that's just what I want for peripherals. I just want something that can make the experience easier for my players, for me, where you can very easily access everything, you know, to like I can drop a token on the map. And to be fair, Roll20 like does this plenty. I can drag a token off from one side, put it down, it generates a character sheet that I can roll everything for. I think that's good. I would prefer if I drag a token onto the map, it doesn't necessarily generate a character sheet, but I can click the token and see what actions it actually has versus not have. And then I can click a little tab that's a sheet that pulls up the character sheet when I need it, rather than having to minimize the character sheet to do everything and then unminimize it, you know, every time. Like there's all kinds of stuff that are just small little bits that you can do to enhance the experience that are just quality of life, you know, that don't take away from the actual tabletop experience. It's not actually a game. It's just maneuvering your pogs and manipulating the environment or changing the lighting easier. Also sound effects and like generic music lists. There are some stuff out there, like Sirenscape has some pretty good stuff out there as well, but I just want a program that does all of that, you know. Makes it easy and easy to access. It's just I don't know, I think that the tabletop overall has a lot of space to grow, and I'm just excited to see that. And I want to see the space grow in ways that people aren't necessarily like expecting, you know, or things that change the game as we know it for the better. That's what I'm looking for. But that's gonna be it for this stream. So interesting we didn't talk much about the communities, but I do think we talked about the core of tabletop, at least as it is right now in the space. And we've made some predictions, have some ideas on, you know, what could or couldn't happen, and a good conversation overall.
Yeah, it's a fun one. I like some of the ideas we come up with, and I really fucking hope we can do Riptide off seasons and play Lancer and VTM. Please.
Yeah I'm sure. But yeah, so I guess that's gonna be it for us. Hero points for everyone. Yay. I'm debating on whether I actually want to run a one shot next month or not. I feel like I'm working on a lot of stuff personally that learning a whole nother game system right now would be rough.
Also, planning stuff around the holidays is like the worst month to like plan
Also
stuff.
rough.
Because like I know I have some like plans for midway of December. You'd have to run it in like first week or two.
Yeah, I mean, kind of the same. So
and I'm already increasing my own shit to make sure I don't miss an upload at all for Christmas, despite not being at home.
And that's also in consideration. So we might not do a one shot this year, rest of this year, but we probably will start up back in January. Because still want to check out new game systems. Still want to do what we're doing. Gives a chance for people to add more to the forums that are still available if you want to add to it. And as well, hopefully we'll be seeing some new kinds of content. We've been talking about a lot of extra content stuff on the side. I think there's been some good ideas and some interesting ideas. And I'm very excited to see what this next year brings. I think if things start kind of like slowing down during the holiday season, that's very normal. You know, videos don't do as well. Everyone's really busy during the holiday season, can't sit down and just watch YouTube all day like they can normally. And so it becomes a little less worthwhile for content creators like myself to invest a ton of time into producing videos that are only going to get like 200 views when they normally get like 3 times that much. So if things taper off a little bit, it's just the holiday season. It'll kick right back up in the beginning of the new year. And also, we will not be here next week. Next week is Thanksgiving.
Yep.
And so we will not be here. So happy holidays to everyone who we don't get to see. And we will be back on the 1st of December. And then we'll see where it goes from there. I know I'll be around, but I know Alex has a lot of plans. So it's definitely going to be a lot. But, you know, it's the holiday season. It's to be expected. And, happy holidays all you. Hope you all enjoy.
Everybody. Yeah, and there's at least 2 Thursdays where I am in December. Like, 22nd and then, like, 29th, where, for sure, I ain't here. I'm going to be here.
And that's to be expected. And I'm always going to say prioritize real life over tabletop. And that comes through the channel and streams as well. As we're going to prioritize our families and our holiday seasons over, the stuff we do the other 10 months out of the year. So
true.
But that's all I got. Do you got any news?
Released a video today. I talked about Tyranids. If you like big bugs, check it out. Also, I guess, I might actually try this. I don't know when it'll drop. I might look into making Warframe videos and stuff. So if, I don't know, you want to know about Warframe more, go check out my channel. Maybe I'll do stuff on Halo at some point, because I really like Halo. I don't know. I'm considering doing other stuff and other sci-fi stuff, just tossing it in there every once in a while when I think it'd be funny. So if you like other sci-fi, go sub to my channel. It's linked in Cam's YouTube.
They are pretty good. I like that comment, Lynn.
They're very good. I also, sadly, I'm really sad. There's some really cool lore that I did not mention because I only learned about it yesterday when I went to like the game store, and I was like, I recorded it Monday and it's edited and already uploaded. I cannot go back and like add this. It's really cool lore, but the Swarm Lord, I'm not going to get into it. I'll make another video on the Swarm Lord to make up for it.
Fair. You can never get everything right. You can never get everything in one video.
It was a thing where I was like, oh, I'm interviewing Tyranids, and then my buddy's like, oh, did you talk about this thing? I'm like, that's a thing? Fuck. Damn it. No, that's so cool. So I'll have to do it later.
But, all right. That's going to be it from us. Have a good night, everyone.
Have a good night.